Really, this is about sharing with you important considerations, tips, ways for you to begin, if you haven't done so, to really use AI as basically another tool from whatever tools you're currently using. To answer that first question, I actually asked my friend ChatGPT, and I asked ChatGPT to explain this to me as if I was basically a young child. It turns out that I've done a lot of research on the brain, and I know that it's very rare that we complain when we understand with ease and flow. Haven't you noticed? We tend to dismiss information or jump off website after a few seconds because we just don't want to make the cognitive effort. So AI, according to ChatGPT, is kind of having a super smart friend who can help us with all sorts of tasks. Okay, all right. Then I had ChatGPT generate an illustration of what that super smart friend can help us do. And of course, the first sort of common image about AI is this idea of a friendly robot. But there's more to that, of course. And there's also the extreme of how AI can be used, which is to guide business decisions, as controversial as maybe getting a yacht for your business, right? Now, what is ChatGPT? Because some people somewhat assume that AI is ChatGPT. Well, AI has been used for decades, but the new form of AI is what's called conversational or generative AI. And that has the power to create basically human-like conversations. And that is to have a sense of the context that is the one that you're working with, whether it's a particular business question or personal question, and to receive information or guidance as if you were really in the presence of an expert, which is pretty remarkable. It's remarkable, yet, and you all know that, it has gone through this very common hype curve, which Gartner, a research group, is monitoring quite carefully. And we are, in a way, still at the peak of inflated expectations. And the reason I bring that up is because, as exciting as the topic is, we still need to be rather careful in terms of what is the product of generative AI, especially. And what I want to do before I move right into the neuromarketing AI topic is really give you a sense of common applications that most likely you've already seen. For instance, in healthcare, it is truly believed that we're going to be able to have very powerful ways to mitigate the cost of healthcare. And in fact, some applications are as bold as promising a substitution of, let's say, medical reps by AI, meeting doctors and informing them on the spot as to what is a counter indication is not an easy business. And AI may well be the right answer to provide those critical support system. As you can see, this is really designed to create conversations. In the legal business, it's obvious that sorting through the different cases, making sense out of those legal questions is not easy. And it is obvious from where we can already see players that there are ways to accelerate and resolve legal matters. Matters sometimes of hours or days instead of weeks and months. In education, which is clearly an area where I'm very excited to participate as a professor of media psychology, there is, in fact, finally an opportunity that we see AI-powered universities, and particularly universities or solutions that can customize degrees for us, which is, in terms of the cost of education and the prospect of education, I think, a pretty exciting outcome. In retail, of course, which has been under severe attack, there is an opportunity to reboot, to some extent, our experience, to use augmented reality, for instance, to guide us towards the best deals, to guide us towards maybe an assessment of how good your vegetables are. How many times have you found that by the time you get home, you may have overpaid for, asparagus or another type of product? Meanwhile, in the retail environment of the future, we do see the retail of you, where multiple devices, multiple opportunities to assess your needs, to assess your sizes, if that's an important aspect of how you shop. In beauty, where I do a lot of work, there are already some very cool applications that perform all kinds of simulations so that you can see right? Augmentation right on the screen. Now, most of those may not be of interest to any of you, but if you're here today, I suspect because of the title, you're interested in seeing sales and marketing application. And one of the probably earliest form of AI for sales and marketing has been in the automation of sales call. And the apps have initially suffered from a lot of hype, but now we're really seeing some models that learn, existing social media platforms such as LinkedIn, for instance, and find ways to carefully and ethically essentially automate processes that are very tedious and often not very cost effective. It is also interesting to see a lot of AI application in video production. The whole field has been, to some extent, the one part of production that tends to delay the generation of campaigns. It is likely that we will be able to very soon construct and output entire videos that are informed by AI guidance. Now, I've been in a particular field of marketing called neuromarketing. I'm in fact credited for starting the field about 20 plus years ago. And so I want to take you to a very accelerated view of what I have learned by using neuroscience, by considering what happens with people's brains when they are interested in a product or about to make a decision. So what I've learned in a very short order is that we receive more information to our brain that we can process. And I'm sure that won't, shock you, except that then the real issue in optimizing messages is to make sure we optimize them for whatever bandwidth of attention we have. Now, this work of focusing on the brain has received a lot of attention. We've received a lot of awards in terms of the critical importance of looking at decision making from the perspective of the brain. But more importantly, we've helped a lot of customers, whether they make software, whether they make actual physical products or deliver services, because in a way, regardless of what you sell, regardless of what you want money for, you're going to need a good message, and you're going to make sure that that message is activating specific parts of the brain. Now, neuromarketing did not exist without some research, and AI was central to the ability that we now have to understand facial expressions, to look at voice data when people talk and extract their emotions, to look at where our eyes are effectively going when we are watching a website or commercial. And finally, if our skin is showing some arousal. All of those have been, the kind of research that I've done for over 2 decades, but now can be simulated, can be, in a way, done with AI models. What does that mean? Well, I've identified that there are 6 ways through which your messages should engage the brain. And it turns out that these 6 ways can now be predicted through AI. So I'm just going to go very quickly through those 6 qualities your messages should have. All right, I'm back. I'm sorry. Thank you for the sign singles. Yes, we're good. So we should be able to resume our presentation on AI. So there are 6 ways by which you really need to consider the quality of your messages, and I'm going to share with you how those ways can in fact be measured by AI. Your messages should be always personal, and more importantly, they should consider highlighting a pain or a frustration that people are trying to resolve. For instance, in the beauty field, I've been working with Avon for a long time. We don't shy away from talking about the fact that people may not be happy with their hair. And that anchor is essential to get some attention. And we'll talk about this improved way to basically hook people, because it's always based on some sort of pain or frustration. The other part about AI is to really help your message make decisions. And decisions in our brain is accelerated only to the extent that we can see contrast. I'm going to shock some of you here because it's an old campaign, but I like the way this campaign is presenting in basically contrasting a door versus another, the value proposition of Weight Watchers. This is the kind of nudging our brain needs to create decisions. And therefore, in the work that I've done for many companies, it's to seek a claim, a value point that can articulate a contrast between your life before and your life after. The third quality of a message is to be simple enough to be processed with ease. I already mentioned that at the beginning, because our bandwidth is very limited. We receive a ton of information, and we only have a fraction of the bandwidth we can use to absorb and process a message. And therefore, it is part of your job when you create a message to eliminate as much friction as you can. Your message, of course, should be memorable, and there are rules that AI can learn so that you know the first part of your message must be very, very strong. We call that the grabbing value of your message, because we don't have enough attention, enough energy for mundane considerations, for business overview. We just want to know right away, why is this so important to me? That's the grabbing part of your story. And virtual presentations are going to crash the attention and the retention of your message unless you come up with that story. And that story is going to be a story of what kind of frustration you're on a mission to eliminate. How can you eliminate it through a limited number of claims that contrast your life before and after? And what kind of evidence do you have so that I can consider that story believable? That will all make your story a good message for the brain. A couple more. The visual effect, of course, of your story is central. And that is what AI has learned to do, to decode an image, to find if that image has enough elements to attract your attention. For instance, in this particular billboard, we're not just looking at a picture. We're looking at an entire story of this poor guy who is going to be projected to his own death. Stories and visual stories are the kind of messages that are going to grab your customers' brain. And of course, a story doesn't really work unless it has the capacity to move us, to create emotions. And emotions are the glue of your message. Yes, I know this next slide is going to shock you, but it's a terrific way of reminding those of us who have the problem that is solved by preparation H, that it is an uncomfortable problem, and therefore it requires our urgency. Now, when you look at all these 6 qualities of your message, the good news is 4 of those already have AI models. We have AI models that can assess the cognitive effort that your messages are going to create. We have AI model that can actually predict how memorable your message is. We have AI model that can predict where the eyes are going to go and for how long. We have AI models that can even determine if people are going to have an emotion when they land on a particular website. So let's talk about eye tracking. Eye tracking, for those of you who are not familiar, is a powerful methodology which has been carried out for the most part using human subjects, but now can be predicted. So you can load up an image and you can have these maps, which in this case on the left one is showing you which areas of this image are going to receive the most human attention, even though this is an algorithm. Now, computer vision, which is part of the AI model, has been around for many, many years, and we know which of those elements, which of those pixels are going to get priority from our visual system. We also know which is not going to have priority. And so this AI model of prediction is very, very important, because when you do a visual for your homepage, we want this visual to engage, not move people away. We can calculate areas of interest. We can figure out if some of your copy has the right font, has the right contrast. We can even predict on the right side here the path of the gaze. Where are the eyes going to go? We can now extract the emotion of the characters that are featured in a commercial. Now, why would that matter? Because as humans, we are sponges of others' emotion. And therefore, if you carefully always choose to feature characters, and I highly recommend that, especially facial expressions, well, then you must consider the nature of that facial expression. It can't just be neutral. It has to be one way or another to attract more attention. It could be fear, it could be sadness, it could be anger, but it also could be joy, happiness, and confidence. So having an AI model confirm and verify how easy it is to decode the emotion is really an important aspect. Now I'm going to finish this presentation with demonstration of generative AI. Now, generative AI is really your opportunity to receive messages or at least content that can approach the qualities that I just talked about. The problem with generative AI is if you don't have a model such as mine, then you're kind of left with whatever the AI is deciding to give you. My contention, my argument here for all of you is you need to guide AI with a theoretical model, a persuasion model that can basically create the boundaries of the responses that you get. And the boundaries at SalesBrain is about a model that starts with the pain grabber, because we know after 20 years worth of research that if you don't have somehow a message that solves a pain or a frustration, you don't have nothing. You will not grab the earliest form of attention, which comes from our primal brain, the brain that has helped us survive for hundreds of thousands of years. So pain grabbers are important. We're going to talk about that. Finding a limited number of claims, reducing the expression of your value is essential, because we don't have the bandwidth. We don't have the will to spend a lot of cognitive effort. And of course, finding the evidence to support your claims. This is the framework that I'm going to suggest you start using if you want to talk to generative AI. You want to ask about what pains do my customers, as long as the customers are not too difficult to describe, what claims, what are the limited arguments that I can make, and how can I make those claims sing? How can I make them rhyme so that your message is more memorable? And then what evidence can you find? Studies, can you find evidence that support your argument? So this is where generative AI is quite powerful, because you can begin to have what we call prompts, which are instructions that are giving you some guidance, some ways to maybe look at a brief or a story that would have a thread that is compatible with your marketing objectives. For instance, in this particular case, why don't you create an advertising script to promote XXX, your product, for Mother's Day, that would start describing a central pain or frustration, then unpack and name with short words 3 claims or outcomes and present evidence to support them. All I did here is create a prompt that is basically informed, supported by the SalesBrain model. And I can do that in ways that I think will make you smile, because one of the techniques that we use at SalesBrain is word playing. word plays in advertising are very, very good and effective because they make us smile. For instance, when I say more bang for your buck, it's a play on the words more bang for your buck. If I say why wait and it's WEIGHT, wow, it's a construction of a word that makes us think twice. If I say Amazon or Amazoff and I have a visual that describes the horrible contrast between those two, my brain is going to be able to understand that. And of course, beware the heat. This is yet again an opportunity to call for attention. Well, you can have some interesting wordplays. For instance, if I say, find me wordplays for skincare products in general, this is the kind of output that I get in just a matter of seconds. Now, I'm not saying everything is perfect here, but this is the right raw material that most of us, whether you're a copywriter, an advertising executive, or just a CEO, you want good ideas. And having an initial projection, initial production, ageless, rageless. I mean, maybe this does not work for prime time, but you have to admit, this is quite intriguing. And that's the whole point of my conversation here. What can you do to learn and optimize a number of techniques that we described in our book, that we described in our workshop? Yet again, another one, which is to use rhetorical questions. And I'll close with that. Rhetorical questions are basically questions we already have answered in our brain, and we are fond of those questions. So use them in advertising, use them in social media posts. What is a rhetorical question? Well, create a question that starts with what if you and address pains and frustration for buying XXX. And you will be amazed at the short, very, very powerful question that we know, and we have an entire chapter in our book showing the importance of using you or what if you and so on. So these are proven messaging templates, if you will, that AI can help you complete. Finally, yes, of course, there's more than just generation of ideas in text. The field of image generation is fast and furious, including video. And I encourage you to play with AI in that way, not necessarily to do finished work, but work that can present opportunities to be finished as it should by artists and designers and such. So you want to know more about AI? I do at least want to make you aware that I am going to run some workshops on the entire methods that you just heard the highlights about. And it's really a workshop where you bring in your product, your services, your value prop, and you can learn the model and start using it with AI models that I just discussed. Well, thank you guys for attending today's program. I will be sure to share the information. I visit salesbrain.com. There's tons of free information. We're very generous, I think, about sharing our model and our teaching. But also follow me on LinkedIn if you're not doing so. I'm a very active participant and sharing a lot of content. So thank you for all of you to attend this program, and I hope maybe I see some of you during the teaching sessions in April or May. Take good care of yourself, and I hope you can enjoy the good side of AI in the near future.